You think the answer is to explain yourself. You think the answer is to prove it, to defend it, to make them understand. You think if you just talk enough, fight enough, chase enough, the world will finally give you what you deserve. But you're wrong. You're wrong about all of it. The thing you are chasing is running from you precisely because you are chasing. The people you are trying to convince respect you less every time you open your mouth. And the life you want is standing right behind a door you keep slamming with your own noise. The real truth is this: your power was never in what you said. Your power was always in what you refused to say. There is a force that moves in your favor the moment you stop performing and start becoming. It does not announce itself, it does not argue. It works in the quiet, in the unseen, in the space between what you feel and what you show. I call it the silent architect. It is the part of you that builds your entire reality while your mouth is closed and your ego is asleep. Most people never meet it. They talk over it their whole lives. But the ones who learn to sit in silence, the ones who learn to focus only on themselves and let the world wonder, they watch everything fall into place without ever forcing a single thing. You do not rise by being seen. You rise by being sealed. You do not win by explaining. You win by disappearing until the work speaks for you. Say that again slowly. You do not win by explaining. You win by disappearing until the work speaks for you. And here is what you need to understand tonight. The person who cannot stay silent will always sabotage the very thing they are building. They leak their dreams to people who envy them. They react to every insult and hand their peace to strangers. They explain their plans until the fire dies. They confuse being loud with being powerful. And by the time they realize the difference, they have already given away everything that was meant to be theirs. Noise is not strength. Noise is a leak, and a leaking vessel never fills, no matter how much you pour. So let me ask you the question that this entire message will answer. What if the thing standing between you and everything you have prayed for is not more effort, not more talking, not more proof, but a single decision to go quiet and turn your entire focus inward until the world has no choice but to move toward you? Hold that question. Do not answer it yet. By the end of this, you will know. Let me tell you what silence really is, because you have misunderstood it your whole life. You were taught that silence is weakness. That the quiet one in the room is the one who lost. That if you do not defend yourself, you agree with the accusation. That if you do not announce your plans, they are not real. Everything you were taught about silence was a lie designed to keep you small and reactive and easy to control. Because a person who talks constantly is a person you can read. A person who stays silent is a person you cannot predict. And what cannot be predicted cannot be stopped. There is a moment in Scripture that most people rush past, but I want you to sit inside it tonight. Jesus stood before Pilate. He was accused, mocked, surrounded by men screaming for his death. And Pilate turned to him, expecting a defense, expecting him to argue, to beg, to explain. But the word tells us that he answered nothing, not a word. And Pilate marveled. The most powerful being to ever walk the earth, in the moment when everything was on the line, chose silence. He did not defend himself, because he knew a truth you are only beginning to learn. When you are aligned with something greater than the moment, you do not need to win the argument. You are already carrying the outcome inside you. Napoleon Hill, the man who talks too much accomplishes little, and the man who says nothing but does much becomes the one everyone watches. He understood that the loudest person in the room is almost never the most powerful. The powerful one is sitting quietly in the corner, absorbing everything, revealing nothing, letting others expose their weaknesses while he keeps his own hidden like buried treasure. Hill spent his life studying the wealthiest and most influential people of his era, and he noticed a pattern that surprised him. They were not the talkers, they were the listeners. They were the ones who had mastered the discipline of the closed mouth and the open mind. Think about what happens every time you break your silence out of insecurity. You feel an insult, and you fire back. And in that instant, you have told the other person exactly how to hurt you. You feel excited about a new goal, and you announce it to everyone. And the moment you speak it aloud, some quiet part of your mind treats it as already accomplished, and the hunger fades. You feel doubted, and you over-explain. And the more you justify, the smaller you look. Every leak, every reaction, every desperate word is a withdrawal from an account you cannot afford to empty. This is the sabotage no one warned you about. You are not being stopped by your enemies. You are being drained by your own noise. There is a reason the wisest book ever written returns again and again to the power of the closed mouth. In Proverbs, it is written that even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace, and the one who shuts his lips is considered a man of understanding. Read that slowly. You do not have to be the smartest person in the room. You simply have to be the quietest, and the room will assume you know something they do not. Silence creates a gravity that words can never create. When you stop explaining, people lean in. When you stop chasing, people wonder. When you stop reacting, people respect. The less you reveal, the more powerful you become, because mystery is a kind of authority that no argument can buy. But this is not only about how others see you. This is about what happens inside you when you finally stop the noise. Because the greatest cost of constant talking, constant reacting, constant explaining is not what it does to your reputation. It is what it does to your soul. When you are always speaking, you are never listening. And when you are never listening, you cannot hear the still, small voice that is trying to guide your entire life. Elijah stood on the mountain waiting for God, and there came a great wind that tore the mountains, but God was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but God was not in the fire. And after the fire came a still, small voice. That is where God was, not in the noise, in the silence. Ask yourself something honestly right now. When was the last time you were truly silent? Not distracted, not scrolling, not half listening to something in the background. Truly, completely silent, with nothing pulling at your attention. Alone with your own mind and the quiet presence that lives beneath it. For most people, the honest answer is that they cannot remember. And that is exactly why their lives feel scattered, reactive, and out of their control. They have never given the silent architect a single moment of quiet to do its work. Napoleon desired that the subconscious mind works most powerfully in the stillness, in the moments before sleep, in the silence where the conscious chatter finally dies down. He understood that your deepest reprogramming does not happen while you are busy and loud and reacting to everything. It happens in the quiet, when you stop feeding your mind with noise and start planting it with intention. This is the same truth the mystics knew, the same truth the prophets knew, the same truth every person who has ever built something great eventually discovered. The outer world is shaped in the inner silence. Always, without exception. Now let me show you what focusing on yourself actually means, because this too has been twisted into something ugly. When you hear focus on yourself, you might think of selfishness. You might think of arrogance, of ignoring everyone, of caring only about your own desires. That is not what this is. Focusing on yourself is not turning away from others out of coldness. It is turning toward your own foundation so that you finally have something real to offer. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot guide others while you yourself are lost. You cannot build a life for anyone while your own house is cracked at the foundation. The most loving thing you can do for the people you care about is to become whole, and wholeness is built in focused, quiet, self-directed work that no one else can see. Consider how much of your energy right now is scattered outward. You are worried about what they think. You are managing how you appear. You are reacting to every message, every opinion, every comparison. You are pouring your precious attention into 100 small holes, and by the end of the day, there is nothing left for the one project that actually matters, which is you. Imagine, just for a moment, gathering all of that scattered energy back into yourself. Imagine taking the focus you waste on people who are not even thinking about you and pointing it fully at your own growth. That is not selfishness. That is stewardship. That is finally taking responsibility for the one life you were given. There is a story in Scripture that captures this perfectly. When Nehemiah was rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, his enemies came to distract him. They called out to him again and again, asking him to come down from the wall and meet with them, to explain himself, to defend his work, to justify what he was doing. And Nehemiah sent back one of the most powerful sentences in all of Scripture. He said, "I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it and come down to you?" He refused to come down. He refused to be pulled into the noise. He knew that every argument he could have won at the bottom of the wall would have cost him the wall itself. So he stayed focused. He stayed silent toward the distraction. And the wall was finished in 52 days, a feat that should have taken years. That is what happens when you refuse to come down. That is what happens when you stop explaining yourself to people who only want to pull you away from your purpose. The work gets built, the wall goes up, and the ones who mocked you from the ground are left staring at something they could never have created because they were too busy talking to ever build anything themselves. If something in you just recognized itself, if you have felt the pull of people trying to make you come down off your wall, I want you to do something right now. Go to the comments and write the words, "I will not come down." Let that be your declaration tonight. A line drawn in the sand between the person who kept getting distracted and the person who is about to change everything. Write it and mean it, because the moment you claim it in words, you begin to live it in truth. Now let us go deeper, because I promised you the silent architect, and it is time you understood how it actually works. Your subconscious mind, the deepest layer of who you are, does not respond to your loud demands. It does not respond to the frantic voice that begs and pushes and worries. It responds to the quiet, steady impression you make on it in the moments of stillness. It is like fertile soil. It does not care what you shout at it in the daylight. It only grows what you plant in it in the silence. And most people spend their days shouting at the soil and their nights poisoning it with anxiety, then wonder why nothing beautiful ever grows. The silent architect builds according to the dominant image you hold, not the words you speak. This is why talking about your dreams so often kills them. When you speak your desire out loud to people who cannot hold it, you release the pressure that was meant to build it. It is like cutting a small hole in a sealed chamber. All the force that was gathering behind your vision hisses out into the air and is gone. The ones who achieve the most are almost never the ones who talk the most about what they are going to do. They are the ones who go quiet, who disappear for a season, who let the whole thing build in the dark until it is too solid to be stopped. And then one day the world simply sees the finished wall and calls it luck. Napoleon desired that a definite purpose held silently in the mind, backed by faith and repeated in the stillness, becomes a magnetic force that draws the resources, the people, and the opportunities needed for its fulfillment. He called it a burning desire fused with faith. But notice the word he used again and again. It is held in the mind. It is not scattered to the wind. It is not announced to everyone who will listen. It is sealed inside, protected, fed in private, and released only when it is ready to be seen. The loud dreamer stays a dreamer. The silent builder becomes the thing others only dreamed about. Here is a truth that will sting a little, but you need it. Some of the closest people to you cannot be trusted with your vision, not because they are evil, but because they cannot see what you see. When you share the biggest thing in your heart with someone whose faith is smaller than the dream, their doubt becomes a weight on your subconscious. You walk away carrying their fear as if it were your own. This is why the word tells us to guard the heart above all else, for out of it flow the springs of life. Guarding your heart is not only about avoiding sin, it is about protecting the seed of your future from the frost of other people's unbelief. Some seeds must be planted in secret precisely so they can survive. Even Joseph learned this the hard way. He was a dreamer, and God gave him a vision of his own rising, a dream of his family bowing before him. But he was young, and he had not yet learned the discipline of the sealed mouth, so he told his brothers. He announced the dream to the very people who envied him most. And what did they do? They threw him in a pit and sold him into slavery. The dream was true. The dream was from God. But the telling of it before its time nearly cost him his life. And here is the beautiful part. The dream still came to pass, but only after years of silence, years of building character in the unseen, years in a prison where no one could hear him explain himself. When he finally rose, he did not need to argue for his position. The favor on his life spoke louder than any word he could have said. Let me show you what this looks like in your actual life, because philosophy without practice is just noise of a higher kind. Tomorrow, when someone tries to provoke you, when the insult comes, when the accusation lands, I want you to do the hardest and most powerful thing a human being can do. Nothing. Say nothing. Let the silence hang in the air. Watch what happens to the other person when they throw their weight against a door that does not push back. They stumble. They lose their footing. They expected resistance and found only stillness, and in that stillness their own aggression is exposed. You did not have to win the argument. You simply refused to enter it, and by refusing you already won. When you are tempted to explain your plans, I want you to feel the words rising in your throat and then swallow them. Let the desire to be understood die quietly inside you. You do not need them to understand. You need the wall to get built. Let your success be the explanation. Let the finished thing be the only announcement you ever make. There is a kind of person who tells everyone what they are going to do, and there is a kind of person who simply shows up one day already having done it. Decide tonight which one you are becoming. And when the loneliness of the silent path presses on you, and it will, because the silent road is a lonely one, I want you to remember that you are not alone in it. You are alone with the very presence that built the stars. Every prophet had a wilderness. Every builder had a season of obscurity. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before he ever led anyone. David spent years hiding in caves before he ever wore the crown. Jesus himself withdrew to lonely places to pray again and again, pulling away from the crowds that wanted him, choosing the silence over the applause. If the Son of God needed the silence, what makes you think you can build anything real without it? If your soul is aching a little right now, if you are realizing how much of your peace you have handed away to noise, write it in the comments. Write the words, "Teach me the silence." Let it be a prayer as much as a comment, a signal to your own subconscious that you are ready to learn what you were never taught. And when you write it, I want you to feel it, because the silent architect is already listening, already beginning to build the moment you decide. Now I want to give you the practice, the actual ritual that seals all of this into your life, because a truth you do not practice is a truth you do not own. Tonight, before you sleep, in the last quiet moments, when the world has gone dark and the noise of the day has finally settled, I want you to do this. Lie down and breathe slowly, deeply, until your body remembers what stillness feels like. Do not reach for your phone. Do not let one more voice into your mind before you close your eyes. This threshold between waking and sleep is the most sacred ground you own. The moment when the conscious mind releases its grip and the subconscious opens like fertile soil ready to receive. In that space, do not beg. Do not worry. Do not rehearse tomorrow's arguments. Instead, quietly, in the privacy of your own heart, speak these words as if they are already true. I am becoming the person who no longer needs to be seen. I am building in silence what others could not build in noise. I am focused, I am sealed, I am at peace, and everything that is mine is moving toward me now. Do not shout these words. Whisper them into your own soul. Feel them settle, and then let them go. And let yourself drift into sleep while the silent architect goes to work in the dark, arranging what your loud effort never could. This is the ritual of the sealed vessel. Every night you practice it, you patch one of the holes that has been leaking your power. Every night you choose silence over reaction, focus over scattering, stillness over noise. You fill the vessel a little higher. And a full vessel changes everything. A full vessel walks into a room differently. A full vessel does not need to prove anything. A full vessel carries a quiet authority that people feel before you ever say a word, because you are no longer leaking, and what does not leak fills, and what fills overflows. Let me tell you about the season of withdrawal, because this is where most people break, and I do not want you to be most people. When you first decide to go quiet, when you first pull your energy back from the noise and point it at yourself, something uncomfortable happens. The people who are used to your reactions will test you. They will poke harder, provoke more, because your silence unsettles them. They liked you better when they could pull your strings. And there will be a stretch of time, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, where it feels like nothing is happening, where the silence feels like emptiness instead of power, where you wonder if you have simply disappeared instead of transformed. This is the wilderness. And I need you to understand that the wilderness is not a punishment. It is a preparation. It is the place where God builds the container strong enough to hold what He is about to pour into it. Everything grand in Scripture was preceded by a hidden season. The seed must go into the dark ground and seem to die before it can rise as something greater than it ever was. If you dig up the seed every few days to check on it, to show it to people, to ask if it is working yet, you kill it. The silence requires faith precisely because you cannot see what it is doing, but it is doing everything. Napoleon desired that within every adversity, within every silent and discouraging season, lies the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit for the one who does not quit. He learned this from watching men who faced ruin and obscurity and refused to break their discipline. The ones who survived the silent seasons, who kept planting in the dark without demanding immediate proof, were the ones who eventually harvested what the impatient never could. The impatient talk their way out of the wilderness and walk in circles for years. The patient stay silent, stay focused, and walk out the other side transformed. There is a strange and beautiful thing that happens to a person who learns to be alone without being lonely. You stop needing the approval that used to run your life. You stop performing for an audience that was never really watching. You start hearing your own thoughts clearly, maybe for the first time, and beneath your thoughts you start to hear something deeper, a guidance that was always there but was drowned out by the noise. Solitude is not isolation. Solitude is the room where you finally meet yourself, and beneath yourself, meet the presence that has been waiting for you to be quiet enough to notice. Think of how many decisions in your life you made just to avoid silence. You filled every gap with sound. You reached for the phone in every empty moment. You said yes to things you did not want just to avoid being alone. You stayed in rooms and conversations and relationships that drained you because the alternative was quiet, and quiet felt like a threat. But quiet is not your enemy. Quiet is where your whole life has been waiting for you. Everything you have been searching for out there in the noise has been sitting patiently in the silence you kept running from. The world has trained you to fear being alone with yourself, because a person comfortable in their own silence is a person no one can manipulate. They cannot sell you what you do not need if you are at peace in your own quiet. They cannot enrage you into reacting if you have learned to sit still. They cannot pull you off your wall if you have decided you will not come down. Your silence is not just spiritual. It is a form of freedom, a wealth that cannot be taxed, a power that cannot be taken, because it lives in the one place no one else can enter without your permission, the inner room of your own soul. Jesus taught this directly. He said, "When you pray, go into your room, and when you have shut the door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly." Notice the pattern. The secret place produces the open reward. What you build in private, God rewards in public. But you cannot reverse the order. You cannot demand the public reward while refusing the private discipline. The ones who chase the reward without the secret room end up empty, applauded, and hollow, seen by everyone and known by no one. But the one who goes into the room, who shuts the door, who does the quiet work no one claps for, walks out carrying something the applause could never give. If you have ever felt hollow in a crowd, applauded and still empty, seen by everyone and known by no one, I want you to write it down in the comments. Write the words, "I am going into the room." Let it mean that you are done trading the secret place for the public stage, done chasing rewards you refuse to earn in private. Write it, because naming the turn is the beginning of making it. Now here is something that will reframe your entire understanding of relationships. You have been taught that to be valued, you must be available. That to be loved, you must be constantly reachable, constantly giving, constantly present. But there is a deeper law at work, and it is this: value follows scarcity. What is always available is rarely treasured. The person who is everywhere is nowhere. The one who answers instantly, explains endlessly, and chases relentlessly teaches the world to take them for granted. But the one who has a center, who has a life, who has work they disappear into, who cannot always be reached because they are building something real, becomes magnetic without ever trying. This is not manipulation. This is not playing games. This is the natural gravity of a person who has become whole. When you focus on yourself, when you build a life so full and so grounded that you are not desperate for anyone's attention, people feel it, and they are drawn to it. Desperation repels. Wholeness attracts. The needy energy that leaks out of a person who has no center of their own drives away the very connection they crave. But the quiet, self-possessed energy of a person who is at home in themselves draws people in like warmth on a cold night. You do not attract by chasing. You attract by becoming someone worth catching. Napoleon desired that you cannot become magnetic to opportunity by pursuing it with anxious energy, but by becoming, in your own character and self-mastery, the kind of person that opportunity naturally flows toward. He understood that success is not something you hunt. It is something you attract by who you become in the silent, disciplined work of self-development. The hunter exhausts himself chasing across the field. The magnetic person simply stands still, rooted, complete, and watches what he wants walk toward him. And the difference between them is not luck. It is the quiet years of building a self worth being drawn to. Let me be very direct with you about identity, because this is the hinge on which everything turns. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. If you are scattered, you attract chaos. If you are needy, you attract people who drain. If you are loud and reactive, you attract more noise and more conflict. But if you become quiet, centered, sealed, and self-possessed, you attract peace, respect, and opportunity, because like calls to like across every level of life. The work, then, is never really about getting. The work is always about becoming. And becoming happens in the silence, in the focus, in the daily discipline of tending your own inner world instead of managing everyone else's opinion of it. The word says it plainly. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Not as a man speaks, not as a man performs. As he thinks, in the deep, quiet, secret place of the heart, where no one else can see. That is who you truly are, and that is what shapes your entire outer life. The scattered thinker lives a scattered life. The peaceful thinker lives a peaceful life. And the one who learns to guard the gate of the mind, who refuses to let every fear and every opinion and every distraction wander in and out at will, becomes the architect of a reality that others can only envy from the outside. So guard the gate. This is your daily work now. When a thought of fear tries to enter, do not argue with it. Simply do not let it stay. When an old resentment tries to pull you into replaying the argument, do not follow it. Return to the silence. When the urge to explain yourself, to prove yourself, to defend yourself rises up, feel it, name it, and let it pass without acting on it. Every thought you refuse to feed is a thought that loses its power over you. Every impulse to react that you let die in silence is a piece of your sovereignty reclaimed. This is not repression. This is mastery. You are not pretending the storms do not come. You are simply refusing to be moved by them. Let me take you deeper into something most people never learn, the true weight of a single word. The tongue, Scripture says, is a small member, yet it boasts great things. Behold, how great a forest a little fire kindles. The tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity, able to set on fire the whole course of your life. Read that and let it frighten you a little, in the way that wisdom should. One word spoken in anger has ended marriages. One boast spoken in pride has invited the envy that destroyed a dream. One complaint spoken in weakness has planted a seed of defeat that grew into a harvest of ruin. The word is never small. The word is a seed, and every seed becomes a harvest, and you are eating today from the words you planted yesterday. This is why the discipline of silence is not merely about strategy. It is about the very shaping of your reality through the power of the word. When you speak scarcity, you plant scarcity. When you speak defeat, you water defeat. When you rehearse your wounds out loud again and again to anyone who will listen, you are not healing. You are digging the wound deeper with every telling. The one who learns to hold the tongue is not just protecting their image. They are protecting their harvest. They are refusing to plant the very seeds that would grow into the life they do not want. And in that refusal, in that sacred restraint, they leave the ground open for a better seed to be planted in the silence. Napoleon desired that the words a person allows to dominate their speech eventually dominate their subconscious, and the subconscious in turn dominates their whole reality. He warned that careless speech is one of the most common and least recognized causes of failure, that people talk themselves out of their dreams without ever realizing they are doing it. The habit of negative speech, the constant voicing of doubt and complaint and fear, programs the deep mind for exactly the outcomes it dreads. But the one who guards the tongue, who speaks little and plants carefully, gives the subconscious a clean field in which to grow the future they actually desire. Your speech is not describing your life. Your speech is creating it. So watch your words as a gardener watches the seeds going into the ground, because that is precisely what they are. Before you speak, ask yourself, is this a seed I want to harvest? Is this word building my wall or tearing it down? Is this the language of the sealed vessel or the leaking one? Most of what people say all day long is pure leakage, a constant hissing out of energy through complaint and gossip and boast and defense, and they wonder why they arrive at nightfall empty. But you are learning a different way. You are learning that a word withheld is power retained, that a silence kept is a harvest protected, that the quietest person in the room is very often the one planting the most powerful garden of all. Now let me speak to you about your enemies, because you have them, and how you handle them will determine much of your life. The instinct when someone comes against you is to respond, to defend, to match their energy, to prove them wrong. But this instinct is a trap, and it is one of the most effective traps ever set for a human soul. Because the moment you react to your enemy, you have given them control of your inner state. You have let them reach inside you and pull the strings. You have handed your peace to the very person who wanted to steal it, and you have entered a game where they set the rules, on ground they chose, at a time they picked. This is how good people are destroyed, not by the strength of their enemies, but by their own reactions. The word gives a strategy so counterintuitive that most people never obey it, and so powerful that the ones who do are almost untouchable. It says, "If your enemy is hungry, feed him. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." It says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. In other words, take your hands off the outcome. Do not lower yourself into the mud of reaction. Stay on your wall. Stay in your silence. Refuse to come down into their war and let a justice higher than yours handle what you were never meant to handle. The enemy who cannot provoke you is an enemy who has already lost, because their entire power depended on your willingness to react, and you have quietly, sovereignly taken that power away. There is a devastating dignity in the person who will not be provoked. When you refuse to defend yourself against a false accusation, when you meet an insult with unhurried silence, when you watch someone try to bait you and you simply do not take it, you reveal a strength that no argument could ever display. The one who must always respond is the one who is not yet free. But the one who can absorb an attack and remain unmoved, who can let a lie hang in the air without rushing to correct it, who trusts that time and truth and God will vindicate what needs vindicating, that person has a peace the world cannot touch and a power the world cannot understand. Your silence toward your enemies is not surrender. It is the highest form of victory. Let me talk to you now about focus itself, because I have used the word again and again, but I want you to feel its true power. Focus is the act of gathering. It is taking all the scattered light of your attention and concentrating it into a single beam strong enough to burn through anything. Sunlight spread across a field warms the grass gently. But that same sunlight gathered through a lens into a single point can set wood on fire. The difference is not the amount of light, it is the concentration of it. And your life right now is either scattered light warming everything faintly and changing nothing, or it is gathered light, focused and fierce, burning a clear path toward your purpose. The choice is yours, and it is made in the discipline of what you refuse to give your attention to. Most people's failure is not a failure of talent, it is a failure of focus. They have the ability, but they have scattered it across 1,000 distractions, 100 half-started projects, a dozen opinions they are chasing, an endless stream of other people's lives they are consuming instead of building their own. They wonder why nothing catches fire, and the reason is simple. They have never gathered the light. They have never focused long enough or narrowly enough to reach the temperature where transformation happens. But you are learning to gather. You are learning to pull your attention back from the noise and point it, with fierce intention, at the one thing that matters. And when you do, you will discover that you were never lacking power. You were only lacking focus. Napoleon desired that the ability to concentrate the whole of one's attention upon a single definite aim and to hold it there against all distraction is the rarest and most valuable ability a person can develop, and it is the common thread among nearly all who achieve greatness. He observed that the world is full of talented people who accomplish nothing because they cannot focus, and full of ordinary people who accomplish extraordinary things because they can. Focus, he taught, is a discipline, a muscle, a choice you make again and again, and it grows stronger every time you refuse the distraction and return to the aim. The scattered mind is a weak mind, not by nature, but by neglect. The focused mind is a powerful mind, not by gift, but by training. And here is where focus and silence become one thing, because you cannot focus in noise. You cannot gather the light of your attention while 100 voices are pulling it in 100 directions. The reason the world keeps you so loud, so distracted, so endlessly stimulated, is precisely to keep you from ever focusing long enough to become dangerous to its control. A distracted person is a manageable person. A focused person, silent and sealed and pointed at their purpose, is a force. This is why your enemy will fight your silence harder than almost anything else. Your silence is the birthplace of your focus, and your focus is the birthplace of everything you were made to build. Let me warn you about the deadliest thief of focus, and its name is comparison. The moment you look sideways at what someone else is doing, at how fast they seem to be moving, at what they have that you do not, your focus shatters and your light scatters. Comparison pulls your eyes off your own wall and fixes them on someone else's, and while you are staring at their building, yours sits untouched. The word tells us that those who compare themselves among themselves are not wise. And they are not wise because comparison is a game that cannot be won. There will always be someone ahead of you and someone behind you, and if your peace depends on your position in that endless line, you will never have peace at all. But the one who keeps their eyes on their own work, who runs their own race in their own lane in the silence of their own focus, that person cannot be shaken by anyone else's pace. So take your eyes off the others. Their journey is not yours. Their timing is not yours. Their harvest is not yours to measure your barren winter against, because you cannot see the years of silence their harvest cost them, and they cannot see the harvest your silence is even now preparing. Everyone's wall is built in their own season, and the only comparison that has ever served anyone is the comparison between who you were yesterday and who you are becoming today. Are you a little more sealed than you were? A little more focused? A little more at peace in the silence? Then you are winning the only race that matters, and the noise of everyone else's progress cannot touch you. Hold a vision now, in the quiet of this moment. See yourself 1 year from tonight having walked this silent path with faith. See the person you have become. See the peace in your eyes that used to be anxiety. See the quiet authority in how you carry yourself, no longer needing to prove, no longer needing to explain, no longer leaking your power to every provocation. See the work you built in the silence, standing now for all to see, a wall so solid the ones who mocked you can only stare. See the relationships that deepened when you stopped chasing and became whole. See the opportunities that came, not because you hunted them, but because you became someone they were drawn to. Feel it, all of it, as if it is already true, because in the deep soil of your subconscious, in this very moment of silent vision, you are planting the seed that will make it so. I promised at the beginning that I would answer the question I planted in your mind. Do you remember it? What if the thing standing between you and everything you have prayed for is not more effort, but a single decision to go quiet and turn your focus inward until the world moves toward you? You have felt the answer building through everything I have said, but now I am going to say it plainly, and I want you to receive it like the key it is. The answer is yes. The thing standing between you and your prayers is not that you have done too little. It is that you have said too much, chased too hard, leaked too often, and never given the silent architect the stillness it needs to build. You have been trying to force a harvest by shouting at the soil, when all along the harvest was waiting for you to plant in silence and trust the dark. Your breakthrough is not on the other side of more noise. It is on the other side of your surrender to the quiet. And the tragedy is that you were often just one silent season away from everything, and you talked your way out of it, chased your way past it, reacted your way around it again and again. but not anymore. Because now you know. Now you understand what you were never taught. The most powerful thing you can do is not to speak louder, but to go quiet. Not to chase harder, but to become magnetic. Not to explain yourself to a world that was never listening, but to build something so real in the silence that the world has no choice but to turn and look. This is the truth that changes everything, and once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. You will feel it every time you are tempted to leak your power. You will hear it every time someone tries to pull you off your wall, and each time you will have a choice you never had before. Let me warn you about what happens if you ignore this, because I love you too much to leave out the hard part. If you go back to the noise, if you keep explaining and chasing and reacting, you will spend your whole life one silent season short of your destiny. You will watch quieter people pass you, and you will not understand why, because you worked harder, talked more, tried more. You will mistake your exhaustion for effort and your noise for progress, and you will arrive at the end of your years wealthy in words and bankrupt in everything that mattered. That is the fate of the leaking vessel. Not dramatic failure, but a slow, quiet draining of a life that could have been extraordinary, one unnecessary word at a time. But that is not your fate, because you are here, and you are listening, and something in you has already decided. You are becoming the sealed vessel. You are becoming the silent builder. You are becoming the person who focuses on themselves not out of selfishness, but out of a sacred responsibility to the one life they were given. And as you become this, watch what happens. Watch the arguments you refuse to enter dissolve on their own. Watch the plans you refuse to announce grow strong in the dark. Watch the people who could not respect the loud you begin to feel the gravity of the quiet you. Watch everything slowly and then suddenly fall into place. Napoleon Hill, that the moment you truly master your own mind, the moment you learn to direct your thoughts and hold your peace and refuse to be scattered by the world, you become the master of your circumstances instead of their servant. He spent a lifetime searching for the single secret that separated the great from the ordinary, and again it came back to this inner mastery, this quiet self-government, this refusal to be ruled by noise. It was never about doing more. It was always about becoming more in the silence where the real work is done, and Scripture seals it with a promise you can build your life on. In quietness and in trust shall be your strength, not in noise, not in frantic effort, not in the endless proving and explaining and chasing. In quietness and in trust. That is where your strength has been waiting this whole time, in the very silence you were taught to fear, in the very stillness you kept running from. Everything you have been chasing out there was standing quietly right here inside, waiting for you to stop moving long enough to receive it. There is one more thing you must make peace with on this path, and it is the hardest thing of all. The silence requires you to trust a timing you cannot see. When you plant in the dark and hold your peace and refuse to dig up the seed, you are trusting that something is happening beneath the surface, even when nothing shows above it. And there will be long stretches where the ground looks dead, where the silence feels like nothing is coming, where every part of you wants to break the discipline and force a result. This is the test. This is where most people abandon the quiet path just before it delivers everything. Because the harvest almost always comes later than you want and greater than you imagined, and the ones who make it are the ones who could wait in the silence without losing faith. The word says that to everything there is a season, a time to plant and a time to reap, and the two are never the same day. You do not plant in the morning and harvest by noon. There is a hidden season in between, the season of silence, the season of trust, the season where the real work happens where no eye can see. The one who understands this stops demanding an instant harvest and learns to honor the hidden season. They know that the seed underground is not doing nothing. It is breaking open. It is sending down roots. It is preparing to become far more than the small thing that was planted. And they trust that process in the dark, in the quiet, without needing constant proof. Napoleon Hill that patience, persistence, and quiet faith held through the discouraging middle when there is no visible sign of progress is the exact quality that separates the few who arrive from the many who quit within sight of their goal. He found that most people give up not at the beginning, when enthusiasm is high, but in the silent middle, where the excitement has faded and the results have not yet come. That middle is the wilderness, and it is designed to filter out everyone who was only in it for the noise and the applause. But the one who can stay silent and faithful through the middle, who can keep planting in the dark without demanding to see, walks out the other side into a harvest the quitters will never know. So trust the timing, trust the silence, trust that the silent architect is building even when you cannot see a single brick laid. Your job is not to control the timing. Your job is to keep the silence, keep the focus, keep planting the right seeds and guarding the gates and refusing to come down off your wall. The timing belongs to a wisdom higher than yours, and that wisdom has never once been late. What is yours is being prepared for you even now, in a season you cannot see. And it will arrive not one moment too early and not one moment too late, but exactly when the vessel is full enough to hold it. And when it comes, you will understand why the silence was necessary, why the waiting was a gift, why everything had to happen in the quiet before it could be revealed in the light. I want to give you one more practice, deeper than the first, because you are ready for it now. This is the practice of the morning seal. When you wake, before the world reaches you, before a single notification pulls your focus outward, before you speak one word to anyone, I want you to keep the silence for the first minutes of your day. Do not reach for the noise. Sit up, breathe, and in that quiet, set your intention for the day like a king setting the law of his own kingdom. Say within yourself, today I will not leak my power. Today I will build in silence. Today I will focus on my own foundation and let the world wonder. Today I will not come down off my wall. Guard those first minutes as if your whole life depends on them, because in a very real way, it does. The way you begin the day sets the frequency of everything that follows. If you begin in reactive noise, grabbing your phone, absorbing everyone else's opinions and demands before you have even found your own center, you have handed your day away before it began. But if you begin in silence, rooted, sealed, focused, you carry that stillness into every room you enter, and people feel it, and circumstances bend around it. The morning seal and the night ritual are the two gates of your day, and when you guard both, the hours between them transform. There is a deep spiritual reason this works, and it is worth understanding. Your subconscious mind is most impressionable in the moments of transition, the drifting into sleep at night, and the rising out of sleep in the morning. These are the twilight states, the thresholds where the guard of the conscious mind is down and the deep soil of the subconscious lies open. Whatever you plant in these moments takes root far below the surface, where your real life is actually decided. The noise you let in during these sacred windows plants weeds. The silence and intention you choose plant the garden of your future. This is why the ones who master their mornings and their nights master their lives. If this is landing in your spirit, if you feel the two gates of your day and you are ready to guard them, write it in the comments. Write the words, I am guarding the gates. Let it be a commitment you make not to me, but to yourself, and to the presence that is building your life in the silence. Write it, and then go and live it, because a commitment spoken and not lived is just more noise, and you are finished with noise. Let me address the fear that is probably rising in you. The fear that if you go quiet, you will be forgotten. That if you stop chasing, you will fall behind. That if you stop explaining, you will be misunderstood. This fear is the last chain the noise uses to keep you captive, and I want to break it tonight. You will not be forgotten. You will be remembered more, not less, because the world does not remember the loud. It remembers the ones with presence, the ones with mystery, the ones who carried a quiet weight that the noisy could never carry. You will not fall behind. You will pass the very people you were afraid of, because while they exhaust themselves chasing, you will be building something so solid it cannot be caught. And you will be misunderstood, yes, for a season, but understanding delayed is not understanding denied. The finished wall explains itself. Let them misunderstand you now. They will marvel at you later. Remember Joseph, silent in the prison, forgotten by the man he helped, sitting in the dark for years with a dream that seemed dead. Remember David, hidden in the caves, anointed as king, but living like a fugitive, singing his songs to no audience but God. Remember Jesus, 30 years of silence before 3 years of ministry, the Son of God spending the vast majority of his life in obscurity, building in the quiet, the foundation for a work that would change the world forever. If silence was the training ground for the greatest lives ever lived, then your silence is not your exile. It is your enrollment. You are being trained for something the noise could never have prepared you for. Let me speak now to the exhaustion you have been carrying, because I know it is there. You are tired. You are tired from all the chasing that led nowhere. You are tired from all the explaining that changed no one's mind. You are tired from managing what everyone thinks, from reacting to every provocation, from pouring yourself out into 100 holes and never once filling up. This tiredness is not weakness. It is wisdom trying to reach you. It is your own soul telling you that the way you have been living cannot continue, that the leaking must stop, that it is time, finally, to come home to the silence and be still. Come and rest. There is an invitation in Scripture so tender it can break a hardened heart. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Notice, the rest is not earned by more effort. It is received by coming, by ceasing, by laying down the endless striving and entering the quiet. The rest you have been chasing through achievement was always available through surrender. You do not have to earn the silence, you only have to enter it. You do not have to prove you deserve the peace, you only have to stop the noise long enough to let it find you. And here is what happens in that rest, in that silence, in that focused stillness where you finally stop performing. The silent architect, which has been waiting your whole life for a moment of quiet, begins to build. It rearranges what your effort could never move. It opens doors your chasing kept slamming shut. It draws to you, through the mysterious magnetism of a settled soul, the very things you exhausted yourself pursuing. Everything falls into place, not because you forced it, but precisely because you finally stopped forcing and let it. This is the paradox at the center of it all. The moment you stop chasing life, life begins to chase you. If you feel that tiredness and beneath it a flicker of hope that maybe there is another way, I want you to write it in the comments. Write the words, "I am ready to rest," not to quit, not to give up on your dreams, but to lay down the exhausting way and pick up the quiet way, the way of the sealed vessel, the way of the silent builder, the way where everything falls into place. Write it, and let it be the moment the striving ends and the becoming begins. Understand this clearly, because the enemy of your soul would love to twist it. Rest is not passivity. Silence is not laziness. The quiet way is not the easy way. It is, in truth, the hardest discipline of all, because it requires you to sit still while every instinct screams at you to move, to speak, to prove, to chase. It takes more strength to hold your peace than to fire back. It takes more courage to disappear and build than to perform and be applauded. It takes more faith to plant in the dark and wait than to dig up the seed and demand to see the fruit. The silent path is not for the weak. It is for the strong who have grown wise enough to stop wasting their strength. You are becoming that person. I can feel it in the fact that you have stayed this long, that you have let these words go deep instead of scrolling past to the next piece of noise. That itself is a sign. The old you could not have sat still for this. The old you would have needed more stimulation, more speed, more sound. But something in you has already begun to change. You are learning to be still. You are learning to focus inward. You are learning that the treasure was never out there in the noise, but here in the quiet, in the sealed and secret room of your own soul where God has been waiting to meet you all along. So let me bring you home now, to the truth that has been beating like a heart beneath everything I have said. Focus only on yourself and stay silent, and everything falls into place. Not because the world rewards the quiet as some kind of trick, but because silence is the condition in which the deep work of your soul finally becomes possible. When you stop scattering yourself outward, you gather yourself inward. When you stop leaking your power through noise, the vessel fills. When you stop chasing and start becoming, the very things you chased turn around and find you. This is not a technique. It is a law as certain as gravity, as ancient as scripture, as reliable as the rising of the sun. You do not rise by being seen. You rise by being sealed. You do not win by explaining. You win by disappearing until the work speaks for you. Carry those words with you. Let them be the compass that turns you back to the silence every time the noise calls you out. Because the noise will always call you. The provocation will come. The urge to explain will rise. The temptation to chase will burn. And in that moment you will remember that your power was never in the answer you could give, but in the silence you could keep. I want you to do the final practice with me now, right where you are. Take a slow breath all the way down, and as you release it, let the noise of the day go with it. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel the striving loosen its grip, and in this quiet, say within yourself, gently, as if you already believe it, because a part of you finally does. I am done leaking my power. I am sealed, I am focused, I am at peace. I am building in silence what could never be built in noise, and everything that is mine is moving toward me now. Breathe that in. Let it settle into the deep soil beneath your thoughts, where the silent architect is already at work, already building, already arranging the pieces of a life you are only beginning to imagine. You are not the same person who started listening. Something has shifted. Her gate has closed on the old leaking, scattered way of living, and a new gate has opened on the sealed and silent path where everything falls into place. Walk through it. Do not look back at the noise. The people who could only love the loud, you will either learn to feel the gravity of the quiet you, or they will fall away, and either outcome is a gift. Because from this night forward, you belong to the silence, and the silence belongs to you. And out of it, your entire life is about to be rebuilt. If this message reached the deep place in you, if it named something you have felt your whole life but could never put into words, then let this be the moment you seal it. Write in the comments the words, "Everything is falling into place." Write it not as a wish but as a declaration, a truth you are choosing to stand on, a seed you are planting in the silence tonight. And every time you feel the pull back toward the noise, come back and read your own words, and remember who you have decided to become. If you have felt even a spark of what I have shared, take a moment and tap the like on this video, not for me, but as a small act of sealing this truth into your own life. A quiet yes to the path you are choosing. And if this is the kind of message your soul has been hungry for, the kind that goes deeper than the noise, then subscribe and stay, because everything on this channel is built to lead you back, again and again, to the silent, sacred place where your real life is waiting. Share it with the one person you know who is drowning in noise, who is chasing and explaining and leaking their power, who needs to hear that everything falls into place the moment they finally go quiet. You may be handing them the very key that changes their entire life. Now go into your silence, guard your gates, focus on your own foundation, and let the world wonder. Stop chasing what is already trying to reach you, and trust with everything in you that in the quiet you were taught to fear, the silent architect is building a life more beautiful than anything your noise could ever have created. Focus only on yourself. Stay silent, and watch in awe as everything, slowly and then all at once, falls perfectly into place.